Hello out there, everybody. How you doing? This is Troy Haynes of Sky High and Fly Jump Lab, and you are listening to another episode of Raise the Bar. I tonight have as a guest track star Staci, who I came across on Instagram. She is a former high jumper and coach, and has had some pretty amazing experiences in her life. And we're getting ready to welcome her in right now into the green room. I'm calling it the green room because the raise the bar thing behind me on my thing says it's green. And there she
It's green, yeah.
the raise the bar green room. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I the running joke on the show is I really only meet people apparently on Instagram. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll be going through and I'll see posts or whatever, and it's really one of my favorite sources of training or whatever, from psychology stuff to PT rehab, whatever,
Oh,
anything
yeah.
to high jumping. I've seen so many things. Got a great video the other day of Gianmarco Tamberi, the gold medalist in 2021, and they showed like his whole 2016 season encapsulated in like 2 minutes of just jumps, and it had all
Wow.
the heights and where they were. And I'm watching going, okay, I knew this guy was good, but I didn't realize how good he was. And then, I mean, this is an Olympic gold medalist. And his last jump was at 240, which is like 710 and a half. And it was a couple inches of clearance. And I was like, good Lord, this guy was flirting with, getting up there into the stratosphere of the 7-Eleven guys, which there aren't that many of. So anyway,
Well, his I don't know, like his kind of moment at the Olympics this year where he ran to his coach, in tears and just everyone came together and hugged him
right,
was literally my favorite moment of the entire Olympics. And I feel
right.
like it was kind of like a B-side at 3 in the morning. They didn't really,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? They didn't even pick it up on their radar at all. But to me, that was the moment of the Olympics to see everyone come over and hug him like that. And
Right.
yeah.
Big group hug, as I remember. It was
Yeah. I mean, it kept
like 30
going. It
people.
kept going and going. Like more people were coming
Right.
over.
Well,
Yeah.
I think, you having been an athlete and me having been an athlete and now a coach, it's hard to describe to someone, the time, the effort, the energy, I mean, let's face it, blood, sweat, tears, the whole thing where, you've put so much into this effort and then it's taken from you or something happens. Like, I mean, he had the worst possible timing for a kidney stone in the history of the Olympics, like literally right at the prelim, and he made it through the prelim, which is amazing enough. On his third attempt, I think he made 7.4 and a half and comes back to the final. And he obviously didn't have it, and then I think less than a couple weeks later, he busted a 7.7 or 7.8 jump, so the window was just off. It was like somebody
Just
just
a
said,
few
nope,
days. Yeah.
this
Yeah.
isn't gonna happen
Totally.
for you today, so, and then seeing that reaction of just like, just pouring out of them, you're just like, man, yeah, you can feel it. I'm sure there's some other parallels like athletes retiring from competition. That's a tough one. This could be the last time I come out here and do this, whatever that is. And but yeah, that was particularly poignant for sure.
Yeah.
So
It was. Yeah.
Staci, tell us about yourself. I just have taught a little bit of glimmers, and you and I were talking back and forth, but mostly about how to get this time going. How to give us a little background. Where did you jump? Where'd you grow up? All that good stuff. Fill us in on the story.
Sure. I was very lucky. I got to start doing track when I was 6, actually through my school.
Yeah.
And that just had a huge impact on my life. I mean, I feel like almost like it was another parent that I had. And I started high jumping in 8th grade when I was in junior high. And we didn't, like so many kids, we didn't have a high jump coach. We just had a parent that would come pick up their kid a little bit early from practice. And he would come over and kind of be like, no, more like this, less like that,
Right.
and that was it. That was all we had. And then, our ninth graders, would give us tips that they'd kind of picked up. So by my ninth grade year, I was second in our league and jumped a 410, which to me, just was like, oh, maybe I'm a high jumper, because I'd been a 100-meter sprinter. I'd been a 50-meter dash state champion, I was like, oh,
Right.
maybe I'm a high jumper. Um, anyway, and yeah, that is what happened. So pretty much in high school, I kind of became a high jump specialist. We had a very big team, very deep, very big school. So we had a lot of people that really just specialized. And then I went to the University of Redlands. It's a D3 school here in Southern California, um, and jumped there. And I just feel so grateful. I got so much one-on-one time with my high jump coach. Our head coach was our high jump coach. And yeah, every time I jumped for 3 years in college, because I graduated a year early, it was just me and him out on the field one-on-one, and it was just really, really amazing. He had coached other All-Americans and also a high jump national champion on the men's side.
Hmm.
And then, so my first year at nationals, that same guy that he had coached as a champion before, he was also there competing with me, and he won it again. And he
Wow.
gave me some very life-changing advice. And then it turns out, now decades later, the school that I'm coaching at, the high school, is the same high school that he also went to, and he
Wow.
still has the boys high jump record. It's
Right.
from like 1986. It's still
Wow.
standing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then went out and got All American again my senior year, and took off, good 20 years. It wasn't until COVID where I was like, God, I got to get out of the house and start doing something. And I was like, I really want to sprint. I just, like with the cabin fever, I just wanted to be sprinting. And a friend told me about the Strava app. And he's like, you can compete against other people, like running these segments. And I kind of got into that just as something to like, stay sane through COVID, and that ended up leading to me getting into masters and then ultimately getting back into coaching, or getting into coaching. So,
Mhm. Okay. So the
yeah.
coaching career started late, is what you're
So
saying.
yeah, coaching I think this is my third or fourth year, fourth year. Cause the ninth graders now are seniors.
Yeah.
So yeah.
4 years. Okay. And then throw some heights out there. In high school, what was your best height?
I was a 5'3" jumper in high school, and then I went 5'7" in college. But again, I had a fourth year of eligibility that I didn't get to use. So,
Yeah.
as I'm 5'8.5", and I would have
Right.
really liked to, jump 5'8.5".
Right.
And then for masters, I've been 4'8". So, which it's an all-American mark, but it doesn't sound quite as good anymore. I will say though, every once in a while I do jump with my high school girls, like maybe once or twice a year I'll practice with them. And
Right.
and I stay up there with them, and that really, I mean, it seems to, kind of motivate them. They think
Right.
it's pretty cool, like, oh, our coach can jump as high as we can.
Right. Right. Yeah. I can't do that anymore, but I do a little bit of demonstrating, but I'll usually put the bar at 4.6 or something like that, something that I can just pop my knee up and go sailing over. And then,
Yeah.
nice and easy, there's not going to be any layout, like I got to warm up for that. So I almost don't even have the time to do that anymore. I'm like, okay, the kids are here. So, unless I want to go, okay, let's all warm up together, which takes quite a bit of energy on my part, to jog the 2 laps and start doing all the drills. I'm like, no, you guys know what to do. You get warmed up, come back here, I'll be waiting, so
Yeah. No, it
dudes,
mostly happens when, this is why it doesn't happen more than like probably once a year, but usually we have like a track and field class, sixth period, that's on the track. And sometimes I will come out and jump for that, for, to get ready for a master's meet. And then I'm already warm when practice
right,
starts or whatever.
right,
But yeah, no, I'm like, I do not want to pull anything. I don't
yeah,
want to.
yeah.
Injuries are so different in masters for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, I found out about that just a few months ago. I came back after, oh man, the last time I competed was in 1982. I'm trying to get ready for the trials, which I never made it to, and I had a season-ending injury, bad timing, and then so it'd been since '92, I think, yeah, and I literally didn't, I'd play basketball, I could still dunk for a long time. And then, I got up into, I'm 60. So I'm 30 something years later. And, someone's like, hey, do you want to compete at the Masters Indoor Nationals, back in Gainesville? And I
Oh
don't know
yeah.
what possessed me, but I went back there and did it. And I found out that I still hate competing indoors. It's only my third meet ever, and I promptly retired. But it was by far my best result as far as place. First time I no-heighted in high school. Second time after college. I don't think I no-heighted, but I didn't jump very well. And then this time was a second place. So I was like, okay, this is about as good as it's going to get, I think. And then my love affair with USATF was just not rekindled. I wasn't happy with the way I couldn't get away with anything there. It was like, can I do this? Can I warm up? Can I film from over here? No, no, no. We're stuck in this little corner of this, place, and I forget. So easy to see when you're watching on camera. You can't tell how big anything is. But my whole experience with indoor is that everything's too tight. It's too small. There's not enough room, period. So it was just like that. I was almost claustrophobic. And I couldn't really warm up. There's nowhere. I mean, if I wanted to go run around outside, I guess I could have out around the arena or whatever the heck it was. But jogging around inside and stretching and doing drills, like you can't do that here. They had an extra set of high jump pits right there. And so I get in, I start doing some fallback drills, and I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling every bit of 61 years old, and the guy's like, you can't do that. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, why? And he goes, well, we can't use those high jump pits. I'm like, but we're high jumpers.
We know how to use them safely, sir.
I'm like, well, the promoters don't want us using the high jump pit. And I mean, this is the same guy that has literally said no to everything that I asked so far. I'm just like, you're just going out of your way to say no, right? So, yeah.
Sounds like it.
Anyway, yeah, it was it's like when they used to call the NFL the no fun league, when they guys would try to celebrate their touchdowns and they'd get penalties. Now they're just like, yeah, go ahead, celebrate. The ratings are up.
Oh yeah, they zoom in on that stuff now. Yeah, I did. I've only had one indoors meet, and it was at NAU, and there was snow outside on the ground. I mean, like a lot of it. So yeah, no, you just warmed up inside a little bit, and it was very cramped, very, it's indoors, but yeah, no, I jumped horrible,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I think it might have had to do with more with the altitude there because the
Mhm.
Flagstaff's pretty high up. But
Yeah.
and then I also had new shoes, and the difference between like the 20 years ago shoes and the high jump shoes they have now, so different. There was a learning curve to get used to
Yeah.
these new high jump shoes. They're like so stiff, and I
Yeah.
mean it's good, but there's a learning curve.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a new pair of Pumas they're kind of look like a tequila sunrise. It's
Yeah,
a different layered drink. It's like kind of orangey, and then it gets more fiery red towards the end. And
yeah.
yeah, these look pretty cool, but when I put them on, I felt like you did. I was like, man, these are pretty stiff.
I thought I was gonna like snap my ankle.
Yeah, I couldn't put socks on in there either. So I literally went sockless because otherwise I don't think my foot would have fit. And I was trying desperately to find shoes for about 2 or 3 weeks before the meet. It was really difficult. So I had one pair sent to me, and I didn't look at it closely enough, and they weren't high jump shoes. They were long and triple jump shoes, no heel spikes. And I'm,
Gotcha.
oh, if anybody should know, it should be me. But I was in a hurry, and I found something online that, I put in the term high jump shoes, and that's came back. So I thought, oh yeah, they got to be high jump shoes. But anyway, that was craziness. So,
Yeah,
um,
no, they have shoes for everything now. They got distance runner spikes. And I mean, I just feel like, when I was competing in high school and college, there was like one pair of spikes, like the black and white Nikes, and that's what everybody had, whether you were at this event or that event, like that was the
yeah,
spike.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What Under Armour? You got Pumas, you got Nikes, you got and most of them are really good. I do really like the shoes that where the bottoms kind of wrap up around the edges.
Yeah, and then they have the what is the fiber? I
Hmm.
know that's what I have the Under Armour high jump shoes, but it has the that springy fiber on the bottom that's kind of shiny. Do you know what I'm
Okay.
talking about?
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I want to check it out. But I seriously think all my bouncing days are about over. I took one jump, man, when I came up, and I used to do it without thinking. I was one of those white guys that had hops, and I was like, I came up and I mean, I really slammed my foot into the floor hard, and I remember telling the kids, like, don't ever do that. And try not to make any noise when you're coming off the ground,
Yes.
go heel toe, and just rock through there real smooth. And I don't know what possessed me. I came around the curve and I'm like fast, I'm tall, I look good. Wham! I was like, oh, in the air. I'm like spinning, thinking this isn't going to be good at all. When I hit the ground, hit the mat and rolled out, I'm like, put my weight on. I'm like, okay. It sent shockwaves through everything, and I think we might have done a little bit of damage, but I'm like, I think I can finish at least. But I was like, man, I wasn't happy with that at all. So yeah, I promptly retired again from forget the movie. There's some movie I saw where the guy just goes, I want to announce my retirement. That would have been me, like right away. But there was no press either, so I don't know. Everybody was proudly wearing all their medals around. I'm just like, I don't know. I was kind of like you, I jumped 5'3", and I thought back, I'm like, I jumped 5'3". I jumped 5'6" in the eighth grade, but I somewhere in between seventh and eighth grade was 5'3". So I'm like
Yeah.
7'3" to 5'3", a little bit. it's I don't usually
Yeah.
go around there. Yeah, hey, I jumped 5. I really, really, and everybody's like, well, you're 61 years old. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know.
Your brain is still like one of the really hard adjustments for me when I started doing masters is when you're used to opening at a height that you're never even going to jump again.
Mm-hmm.
I used to take off so far away from the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a process to get close, and I'm like, I'm always reaching. The bar is not at 5'5", 5'6" anymore. You
Right.
gotta get closer,
Yeah.
and my brain is just like, no, this is the spot. You take off
Yeah.
from out here, or else you're gonna hit it on the way up.
I love it. Well, you've been trained well. That's I've got a list going of things that I'm constantly teaching my athletes from. It's okay, if you're a jumping computer, okay, and we're putting in your software of your beginning lessons as like a learning computer. I'm like, always be tall, always be cycling, always be accelerating. Three overall rules that will serve us well. Always try to make your upper body match your leg. If your leg is leaning back like this, your upper body should go with it. If your upper body's forward and that leg's back, your leg's trying to tell you where to go. Little things that I think, kids might remember, but, yeah.
Well,
Uh,
I actually have an acronym that I made up and
yeah.
I made it up for myself in college. And, because when you stand there rocking before you're going to start your jump and you're kind of going through everything in your head, I was like, okay, I'm just going to make a system and I will go through, and that way I'll never forget anything. And then once I started coaching, I was like, oh, I could use that acronym
I,
and teach that to my kids. So it's just DAT PAL, drive, accelerate, tall, plant, arms, lean. And those were the things that I just needed to remember, and they kind of made them go loosely
nice.
in order. And
Yeah.
it's something that I'm passing on to my kids now.
Yeah. I love it. One of the things it's funny how things evolve year to year with me and coaching. I went through a like you were talking about. It's and I never quits for me, but for the most part, I would say 95 kids out of 100 are too close the first time they come to see me. They're right on top of the bar, and so instead of driving their knee up and getting the knee to go up above the bar, they start to drive it up, and they're so close to the bar that they have to lay out immediately. They just don't have any time to let the knee drive do its work. And so if I see that, I try to quickly just stop whatever we're doing and go, okay, because if they look really kind of good at it, I know I'm in trouble because now it's a pattern that they've already established.
Yeah, yeah, it only takes a few jumps to get a
It only
pattern.
takes a couple because, especially if you're a nice tall kid and the bar's low and your upper body can just kind of wash across, you're not in fear of hitting anything with it. That's something else. But it's like, and there's always feedback. The other kids will be like, oh, hey, you made that really easy. Or, and I always tell the kids, I go, all it takes is a couple people clapping and patting you on the back, and your brain just goes, oh, this is great. And
Yeah.
I know how to do this. I've already memorized this whole sequence. I can do the little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, and I do this, right? And it's like, no, when the bar goes up, that's a recipe for disaster. So yeah,
Yes.
until we get farther away, as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, kindred spirit. Because it took my little Romanian coach that I found after it was in my senior year at UCLA. I started working with Baru Elias at
Oh, you
106.
went to UCLA. My head
Yeah.
coach at Redlands High School, she went to UCLA as well, and she ran with Bob Kersey.
Mm,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, that goes back. Yeah, Bob was coaching when I was there. I was there from 1980, the fall of 82 to the spring of 86. I did my 4 years.
Okay, yeah, she must have been right after you. I think she was in the last half of the 80s, but yeah, April. Well, her last name was Gidcombe at the
Okay.
time. She did the 800.
Yeah, yeah. There's that was a golden age of track because when I was there, I still remember that almost all of the coaches, for some reason, even though they weren't my coaches, I found myself listening to them because they were very good at what they did. Anthony Curran, one of the best pole vault coaches in the world, in my opinion, nothing but top quality jumpers year after year after year, both college and high school, whatever level, doesn't matter. John Smith, a great Olympic sprint coach, had Danny Lewis or Steve Lewis, Danny Everett, all the Mike Marsh, all these guys that came to UCLA that ended up being Olympic gold medalists in the sprints were all coached by him. Art Venegas, one of the best throwing coaches in the world. I mean, it was just like across the board. So, and then Bobby was there working. Jackie Joyner was there when I was there. She was competing. She was just one of the nicest people you're ever going to meet. I have nothing but positives to say about Jackie Joyner Kersey. Just a class act, an incredible athlete, really hard worker. So it was a blessing to be there for sure. The training facilities alone, the place to train in the best part of LA, in my opinion. If you want to go anywhere and go on a beautiful campus, go to UCLA and walk around. It's gorgeous. The best of Westwood and Brentwood, all that rolled into one. Great places to watch sporting events. You got everything you need. But the training, the people, all that stuff. It was a boom time. I got to tell my kids stories about, bumping into Reggie Miller in the weight room, and of course my kids now are like, who's Reggie Miller? So like, okay, he's way more famous than I was, and you don't even know who he is because yeah,
Even Cheryl Miller, like there's a name drop.
yeah. Well, they just showed the two of them a couple weeks ago because the UCLA and SC played like 3 times in about a month span, where they played each other in the regular season, which USC won both of those, and then UCLA won the rematch in the championship game for the Big Ten title, and then they didn't get to meet. They were scheduled to meet in the semis, but Juju blew her knee out, so USC didn't make it, and then UCLA got destroyed in that game by UConn. So, oh, that was grim. But let's get off that subject. So, you jumped 5'3" in high school, then you jumped 5'7" in college, couple-time All-American at the D3 level. How did you ever get to a place where you thought you might be Olympic trial worthy?
Well, I mean, that was definitely always my hope. I remember my first year that I started doing track was, right during the time of I think it was the Seoul Olympics,
Mhm.
like 84.
88.
Yeah,
84
no,
was,
okay, it was the one before, I think maybe Tokyo? I don't know. Anyway, but I remember just watching the Olympics and that song "One Moment in Time" by Whitney Houston, that was the song of that Olympics. So whatever Olympics that was. But
right.
yeah, I just, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I that's what I want." And at the time, I mean, I had just started running. I didn't really know,
Right.
anything about what that entailed or whatever, but yeah, I mean, I definitely would have liked for that to have happened. I think, my personal life and whatever, it wasn't ever really going to be a possibility. And then, having graduated early, it just, I couldn't justify staying around for an extra
Right.
year. Um,
Hmm.
just and the kids are doing it now, and because of COVID, and they lost eligibility. So like all the people that are graduating from my college now, they're all like, oh, well, we all have master's degrees because they made this special program where you could just get it in 1 year and blah, blah, blah. And they didn't have that back then. So, I just kind of was like, well, I can't like I can't pay 30 grand for another year of track. So,
Hmm.
yeah. And I didn't know anything at the time about clubs or private coaches or even
Yeah.
really masters. None of
Yeah.
that was on my radar. But yeah, I certainly would have liked if it had been, but it's fine.
Right.
It turned out fine.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up because Stacy, it's something we talk about on the podcast quite a bit. Is that, the support system for the American jumpers is pretty much set up in college. Post collegiately, it's not understood. Like you said, I was the same way. I'm like, well, what do I do now? When I got done at UCLA, I still hadn't even graduated. I was on the 5-year plan and I never redshirted. So I go right through 1986. I'm done. They're like, there's the door. No, I was on scholarship and they did pay for the rest of my, some of the schooling. They didn't, say you're done. I thought that was pretty classy and nice, but it was like, you're still going to school, but you're no longer on the team. And then I hadn't even thought about coaching yet. I was still kind of wanting to compete, and then, you find out that it's such a different world out there. If you leave campus, where do you train? Where do you go if you're
Yeah,
ready?
that's, oh my gosh, you got to be a coach. If you're
Yeah,
gonna get
yeah,
access to a high jump pit somewhere, you better be
somewhere,
at your
right?
alma mater or you better be a coach.
Alma mater is good, something like that. But then what do you do when you roll your ankle?
Yeah.
Where's the training room? I rolled my ankles a couple times and I would just hop on the other leg into the training room and stick it in one of the ice whirlpools. And then they'd tape me up and give me my exercises. And like 2 or 3 days later, I'd be pretty good again.
I
So,
think for me the biggest thing has been like I need a coach.
right.
You know what I mean? Like high jump is one of those things where you go and have a conversation with your, your person after every single jump, and
Uh,
it's not just like, oh, you came out of the blocks great, and I mean, there's just, it's so technical, and I'll take videos of myself and I'll watch the videos, but I can't see all the angles, and
right, right.
that for me is the hardest thing. I feel like if I had a coach now at Masters, I'd easily be like 4 to 6 inches above where I am, you know?
So where are you now? You said before you were in Redlands, did you stay in the local area when you got your jobs and everything? You still around?
I stayed here after I graduated and then I did move around a little bit, but I am back living here now and I do coach at Redlands High School now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Redlands that's still inside of the Southern California area, right? It's not
Yeah, it's kind of right on the edge of like the LA sprawl. So
right.
we are like kind of between LA and Palm Springs.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so and still kind of Riverside-ish.
Yeah, it's like if you go north south, we're between Riverside and San Bernardino, right on the 10 freeway.
Yeah, yeah. So, but CIF, right?
Yes.
Division, and I'm imagining it's a huge school. Are you D1?
We are not. So when I was in college here, there was only one high school in Redlands, but since then they have opened two other high schools in Redlands. So we now have a total of three. So we are actually in our league. There are I think they're called Class A schools, and those are the bigger ones, and we're a Class B school. So even in our own league, we're small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it's your fourth year there. You do the men and the women. Do they have you do other events or just high jump?
Just high jump. I mean, I help with the sprinters, of course, at the beginning of the season, and you're kind of down a rabbit hole during the track meets when you're over at the high jump apron. But when I see people run by or they're starting a 400 and I do get a chance to watch
Right.
some of the kids come out of the blocks or whatever, if I see something, I'll say something. But
Right.
yeah, no, I do work with the sprinters, but yeah, pretty much just doing the high jump.
So your training is there at the school. You train one.
I have trained in a couple of different places. I've actually been, really lucky. I have access to the high jump stuff at the University of Redlands at my alma mater. I can use the stuff at the high school, and then there's through another guy I know through Masters. He has access to the UC Riverside track, and
Mhm.
I've met him over there and jumped with him a little bit.
I've been there.
He's so old he does Western roll still. So even then I don't really have a coach.
Right.
He tries and he'll kind of like, oh, this or that, but I'm like, oh, that's not really a thing for the flop. But it's
Have you
at
ever?
least it's nice to have someone who could tell you this is how far away from the bar you were. Even that is helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you? What was my question? I said, have you ever done any virtual training?
I have not. No, I'm not even really familiar with that.
Hmm. Well, it's interesting. I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and I've had clients as far as away as India. I've had clients inside the States, back in Illinois and in Louisiana. If you use Facebook, Instagram, surprisingly, or I'm sorry, Instagram FaceTime, it's amazingly, it works. Like I had a Mexico and I did 20 sessions from India, 13 hours away.
So, like, they're having a friend hold the camera while they're jumping?
You either prop it up and point it at the pit or have
Okay.
someone else hold on. And then, pretty much the same thing that usually would happen will happen. I can be like, okay, let's do some backovers. Let's do
Yeah.
one step, let's do a 3-step, let's do a 5-step, let's do this particular drill, go through. I have a wealth of, pre what do I say, not pre-planned, but pre-videoed or old videos of drills that I like, and when they're done well, I stick them on the site or whatever. But yeah, I and it's surprisingly good, I think.
That's awesome.
Because of
Yeah,
the
because
fact, like you
people
said,
are always telling me like, "Oh, you should do private coaching." And I had like two different people that I worked with, but then the problem was they can't come on the high school track because they're not high school students, and I can't take them on the University of Redlands track because that's liability. They don't know them. And they can't drive, so they can't go down to Riverside and whatever. And so it just, where am I going to train you? But yeah, virtually, if they can find a spot.
yeah, if they can find their own spot, then you can train from anywhere, and
Yeah, that's cool.
that's something you can think about.
Oh, I will.
So I will throw myself out there to you because what you strike at is really the heart of what makes me me, which is I've had the blessings of being very well coached and being not coached at all at various times in my career. So, I had a really good high school high jump coach who was our shot put and discus guy and was also the defensive line coach. And he didn't talk a lot about the high jump doing it, but he kind of knew how to train us. So I did a lot of, we did bleacher hops. We'd basically hop up and down the bleachers on one leg, skip
Hmm.
steps and stuff like that. So, and I always had pop anyway. So it was like, okay, that was good. I was always in shape, probably could have run more, but, I find these things out later as I go along. But Coach Halstead had 5 years in a row, like technically four, but in my mind, 5 years in a row of kids jumping 6'10" or better at Millikan High School from 1981, my junior year, when the guy in front of me, Dave Wicker, jumped 6'10" at our league final meet. One of the standards slipped down and fell all the way down, and the bar stayed on, and they didn't give him the jump. And
Uh,
we all knew he'd made it, and it was like, what the heck did that thing come down for? And
oh,
it doesn't count really. And then, of course, his senior year, he jumped 6'10" a bunch of times. That was my junior year. After he left, I jumped 6'10" and 3/4. The year after I left, John Bareford jumped 6'10", and then Derek Moore, just boom, 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 5 years in a row. So he had to know what he was doing, right? And then my first years I get to UCLA, the coach, Bob Larson, who was the high jump guy, comes up and shakes my hand. He says, "Hi, I'm Bob Larson." And Bob Larson's a famous distance coach. He's, was the head coach of the team when they won their last two NC2A titles. Has been just a fantastic coach. But he did not know anything about the high jump. And he was straight up and he told me, "I'm Bob Larson. I'm the guy, but I don't know anything about the high jump. So you're just gonna be working with Dell and Lee." And that was a blessing because they were both very high level jumpers. But I'm sure they would tell you at the time they weren't yet coaches, so we're like,
yeah. No,
we're
I'm
trying to,
realizing myself there's a
yeah,
learning curve here.
we're training each other and we're trying stuff. But I remember just talking to Leah like a year or two after he left, and he was all of a sudden jumping a couple inches higher than he did when he was there. And I said, what's going on, man? How come you're jumping better? And he said, "You know what? We're not doing as much. I'm not doing as much. Like we
Yeah,
overtrained,
yeah,
heavily overtrained, like highly overvolumed, way too
yeah,
many jumps.
yeah,
Dell's knee would bug him. My shins and my knees ended up being, the constant problem of just overtraining, the
yeah,
shins mostly. And then my senior year, when I really went for it, I had patellar tendonitis in both knees. So I was like, okay, it could have been a lot smarter. I would love to have known what it would have been like to have someone that, brings you into the program and says, here's the plan.
yeah,
I was always the one trying to figure out what the plan was. instead of having
Definitely like a
tell me,
system. Yeah.
yeah, how this is how I do this here, you know. So at the same time, that kind of background has given me that appreciation where I'll be at a meet and I can tell immediately within, I'm sure you can the same. I watch a kid take 2 or 3 steps and then a jump, and I'm like, oh, I know they don't have a coach. There's no way you can be doing.
That's a huge problem at the high school
Yeah,
level too. I think probably half of the schools in our league don't have a coach, and the kids, without coaches, they'll come over like kind of during warm-ups or run-throughs or whatever, and they'll do, 10 jumps. And
yeah,
that's, because when do they don't need practice. And, some of them come over and I'll be like, where are you opening? And they're like, what does that mean?
right.
I'm
Yeah,
like, wait, what do you mean? What does that mean? Like, I don't know, like the bar, and you realize like, oh, my kid's got it pretty good.
right, right.
Yeah.
And there's I actually think it's the trade secret of the high jump is that, again, like you said, one of the more technical events, and I believe all the field events are highly technical. The pole vault's unbelievably technical.
Pole vault, yeah,
The
that's a different animal.
triple jump is a hugely different animal for me. I mean, I think some people are just born to triple jump, but then the more I've watched it and I've coached it some, and I'm just like, you know what? That's a highly technical event. For you to get better and better and keep stretching out farther, you really need to figure some things out. And it's just so demanding that it's hard to push yourself to the highest level and then not break down physically, because it's just, I mean, dude,
Yeah, a lot of shin splints.
yeah, every time you jump, that's 3 jumps, not one. And I had
And
shins.
they're pounding over there.
Yeah, and I
I
did
mean,
1 jump every time, and they're doing 3. So
yeah.
it's like it's crazy, and javelin, discus, all of them, highly technical. So your odds of getting well coached in those things are pretty bad. If you go to a high school, let's say the head coach should have some experience in having done something at some level. That's a very general statement, but they've got something, they've got some organizational skills, whatever. They come, they take the job, and what are they going to do? They're going to put together a staff. How do you put together a staff when you get hired at a high school and you don't know anybody? So
And
unless
you don't have a great budget to work with to draw
you
in
have no
anybody,
money, maybe they
Yeah.
haven't raised any money in a long time, they've never even had a track team before, and then you're there going, okay, I remember this one guy that I think he jumped with me in high school, right? Is he still around? So,
Yes.
and I said, most likely what happens is if the coach does get a staff together, and then one of the kids just purely by luck turns out to have some talent and jumps over a couple bars. And you're like, oh, okay. And who knows a high jump on staff? And the distance runner guy
Oh
goes,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
did I jumped a little bit, when I was a freshman. You're hired. Okay.
Yeah.
Go down there and help that kid, and it's
Yeah,
like,
no, some of the comments when like when we're at a big invitational, or even, I mean, sadly, even at like Southern section,
yep,
you hear some of the comments the high jump coaches are screaming out to the kids, and you're like, dude, if you don't know high jump, like maybe just
try
tell
not to
them good
be.
job or better
Yeah,
luck next time, and try not to mess with their heads because you obviously don't know what you're talking about.
right. And that's, again, it's the same way when you see a kid take 3 steps and you already know they need a coach. I can tell within 2 or 3 words from a coach to an athlete. Many times I'm just like, whoa, no, no, no. Like,
Yeah,
you can't tell them that, coach. Like you're saying, it's like you better off telling them nothing. And you can hear it just in the language. I know there's not everybody would agree. I've coined some of my own terms, and I use them enough to where I think if anybody does read the post, if they're not just watching the video, they might be like, oh, okay, that's an interesting way to say that or whatever. But in general, when you get less and less knowledge, you're just going to you're just trying to make something up on the spot to explain this thing that you're not really sure how it works, and you're going, well,
right.
to try to do, I'm just like, don't say it. Don't say
Well,
it.
I think like if I had to, just kind of umbrella the whole thing, what generally I observe is that they will give some kind of feedback about something that's happening in the air, but the
Right.
fix for that is how you took off from the ground, or the angle you
Yeah.
came in at, or the speed you came in at, but yet they're telling them like, "Oh, you need to roll over more."
Yeah.
you need to run faster, but you don't know what you're talking about. So now this
Right.
kid's obsessed with how he's going to roll over more. What does that
Right.
even mean?
Well, that's the whole thing, like you were talking about before, that what I'm calling early layout itis is I believe just these kids, God bless them, without a coach, going to YouTube videos and watching
Yeah.
whoever,
Yes.
anybody jumping higher than them, they watch it and they go, oh wow, that looks really good. Now maybe someone has a really good layout. Maybe it's somebody doing a backover drill, or something. And they look at that and they're like, oh yeah, see, that guy can really high jump. So they think just from watching that they should throw their heads back really hard right as they're taking off. And I'm like, no, no,
Right.
no, that's a 2-footed jump. And it's kind of not really like the high jump because yeah, the position's like that, but that's not how you really take off. So I've modified that same drill to where we do it with one leg, and you're standing on one leg, you reach arms back and then you do your drive knee and you do try to go up a little bit straighter instead of diving back because you have to get back into the pit somehow. So you do have to do a little bit of jumping backwards. But, I remember a few years ago, there was some Greek dude, I can't remember his name, but he backed over 2 meters, standing back over. And I was like,
Dang.
dude, that's 6'7". That's a heck of a back over. And,
Yeah, for real.
at the same time, it's a great skill, but does it, and now that of course they're talking about maybe bringing back the 2-footed high jump, which I still think they're going to have to outlaw because I seem to remember seeing videos of people doing like back handsprings, like gymnasts
Yeah.
that can like
Yeah.
do double backs over 10 feet. So you're like, that's going to be, it's going to open up a can of worms. But I do like the controversy because at least it gets people talking, about track
For
and field.
sure.
So I wanted to bring this up, and you tell me if you want me to edit it out later, we can. But you had thrown out a comment in somewhere in when we were talking about your background, and I saw on your post, or not your post on your site that you had interesting send up. The DJ, the high jump DJ, right? I went through that, and then I wish I could show it to everybody. I don't have that technology. Um, Spiritual warrior, plant based for 30 plus years, All American NCAA high jump, and then DJ track star Staci. I love that. So, and then you had mentioned something that you had been through, and I saw something about, what we're calling sports psychology and the things that have happened. Is it okay talking about that? Would you like
Absolutely.
a
No, I think that's
platform to
really
talk about that?
important.
Yeah, me too. So,
I mean, high jump especially is just very mental. So we
mhm,
draw in a lot of overthinkers to this event.
right.
So yeah, and talking about it's a it's more technical than some of the other things out there. So yeah, no, I think we should talk about it.
So tell us your story on that, if you don't mind. What happened with you, and how you got through it and continue to get through it, and how you use that to even possibly help someone going through the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I kind of said at the beginning how I really feel like track kind of saved my life. And, when I was 6, I think maybe 1 or 2 weeks before I started running track, I was actually raped by a friend of my dad's
Mm,
at 6 years old. And then nobody really, I told my dad about it, and he just kind of didn't have a reaction. And he was like, okay, I heard you. And that was it. We never talked about it again, ever. So I ended up repressing the memory and just, kind of went along as if nothing had ever happened because no one was even asking me if are you okay or whatever. So I get into running track and I really truly believe that, one of the reasons I ran so fast at 6, it's kind of that age where the other kids are kind of looking around like, oh, do I go this way? And I got out there like, oh no, I already know how to run for my life because I've
right.
done that. I've been in that fight or flight run, and I was like, oh, they're not really running that fast. And I'm like, I'm winning.
Mhm.
So it kind of, it translated into good things for me for track. But anyway, I get into college, and I had remembered that it had happened in junior high and just kind of sat with that for many years. And again, no one was really talking to me about it at all. It was just kind of there.
Mhm.
And my parents would use the word, molested or sexually assaulted, and, never said the R word. So I was in college and, I majored in sociology. I was reading a textbook and it was talking about the sexual assault laws and it said, this is the definition of rape. And I was like, oh, that means what happened to me was rape. And
Mhm.
no therapist, no parent, nobody had ever used that word. And I don't know what it was about that word, but it just triggered PTSD. And I learned later it's called delayed onset post-traumatic stress disorder, but all of the stuff that had just been kind of dormant in me for years just all woke up.
Mhm.
So I went, from just kind of being a regular person to, nightmares and flashbacks and anxiety attacks. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I mean, it just completely, we were talking about the Italian high jumper and how it's just like this particular moment where gosh, if this could have happened at any other time, would have been really convenient. So I mean, I'm literally like getting on the plane to go to nationals when this is all starting. I mean, I had maybe this bomb, this kind of Pandora's box had opened like 2 or 3 days before, but I didn't even really understand at the time, oh, this is PTSD. I was just like, coach, I'm having nightmares every night and I'm having flashbacks. I've never had a flashback in my life. I don't understand what's happening, and I wanted to keep it to myself because, it's embarrassing. But it got so bad that I thought the night before I competed, I'm like, I have to tell Coach Belfield because if I go out there and the official looks like the rapist and I'm gonna,
Right.
I'm not gonna be able to function, and he should know that. And he's a very caring person. And, I felt safe telling him, but I mean, he was just kind of, you could see his heart kind of breaking for me. And he was just, do what you can do. That's all you can do. But one of the main things that he had taught me my very first year there was like how to compete under pressure.
Mhm.
Um, I had never really felt pressure. It was just like, oh, I just go out and it's easy for me and I do well, but it was just different in college. And, um, I just, I started to kind of understand like, oh, I need to be able to like turn this noise off so I can kind of get in this mental zone. And I just hadn't really thought about it like that before. And I think that's just what happened. So that first year at nationals, again, I mean, I hadn't been eating or sleeping. I'm just physically not in a really good place to go have the meat of my life. Um, but I just got into my muscle memory, and thank God nothing out on the track triggered me. And I actually felt like it ended up feeling very calming and made me kind of step away from the volatility of what had become like my everyday life for a good probably 2 months. The PTSD went on, but I was ranked last, so I was 14th. And my goal was like, I just want to be an All American, which was top 8. And I ended up getting third place, which just was completely off of my radar at all.
Mhm.
Way surpassed what I had intended to surpass. And I don't know if maybe it was because I had that kind of ability to dissociate from what had happened to
Right.
me because it had been so dormant for so many years. Um, but knowing that that was possible made me really feel like I had some power and that it was going to be possible for me to fight this and kind of take my life back, because that's really what it feels like, is, your life kind of being taken away from you. Um, and the following year, this is just, it's a crazy thing, but the following year I made it to nationals again, and then just literally at the exact same timing, I was engaged at the time to this to a guy from our cross country team, and he kind of out of nowhere just confessed to me that he had been raped as a child. And I had this whole reaction now all over again from learning that that had happened to someone that I loved. And so I'm kind of going back to nationals again with this like backpack of anxiety and fear
Mhm.
and stress and just not being in my best place, and somehow pulled out another third place. I was ranked a little higher the second year, but I think it just, for me, it really made me feel like getting into that zone and having a runner's high and all of that stuff was just this beautiful place you could escape
Hmm.
from, these things that just torment you to no end. I mean, just to kind of put it in perspective, like during this time, there was a light outside the door of my apartment that was kind of this eerie, like greenish, orangish hue.
Hmm.
And that was the same light that was there during the rape, and I
Wow.
I would see that weird greenish orangish hue, and I was like, no, I can't go outside. I would just see this hue of the light. I'm just these tiny little
Yeah.
things that just completely control you. And yeah, I mean, all I've done so much therapy and everything, and the therapist will always say, well, where's your safe place? Or, where's your happy place? I'm always like, the track. I
Yeah.
don't need time to think about it. It's the track. I already know. And one of the main reasons for that as well, and I think about this with my own kids, coaching, but the high jump is a lot like a trust fall
Hmm.
because a lot of these kids have never, this is kind of the cell phone generation, and a lot of them just haven't done as much outside activity as we have. So for a lot of them, just landing in the pit is something that they have to learn. I'm like,
Yeah.
this thing's gonna catch you. I just want you to feel what it feels like to land in the pit. And um I'll have, one or two kids every year that I'm like, oh, this is a kid like me.
Yeah.
Doesn't trust landing in that pit, you
Yeah.
know? And I kind of know, like, okay, so for this kid, this year, our goal is confidence, or our goal is safety, or our goal is just for me to be a positive role model in their
Right.
life,
Yeah.
just to be a steady person in their life. And for these kids, it's, we want to get league champion and we want to, this, that, we want to get this height. But that's been something that's been really great to kind of come full circle with, is to kind of have that on my radar since I was one of those kids, but to know like, oh, okay, this is someone who is out here running for a different reason than maybe some of the other people,
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
So it's a escape, happy place. Yeah. Where you
yeah,
can take a deep breath and not have to worry about anything. It's funny you said about the fear. I keep telling the kids, I go, you realize you guys are the second most crazy people out here. I go, who do you think the craziest people are? And they go, pole vaulters. I go, yes, they are the
for
daredevils.
sure.
They're running, sticking that thing in the ground and flinging up in the air upside down and spinning around. And, it's like, and they don't even, doesn't even seem to bother them. I said, you guys are a close second because there's a lot of people that literally fear, either A, jumping off the ground and not knowing if they're going to land or where they're going to land, how they're going to land, right? And then you do have some ones that have been traumatized by taking off too close, knocking the bar off and then landing on it. One of those
Yep.
classic bar in the middle of your back things where, I mean, I've had kids never jump again after
Oh
that.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they
Definitely.
refuse, they'll run up 15 times row and not pull the trigger. And
Yes. Yep.
even if you put it down low, they won't jump
Yeah.
again because it was too
Well,
painful.
one of the other things that I also kind of have my eye out for, because I recognize this in myself, but I was never able to really like open up my neck and drop my chin back. And
Hmm.
I kind of got to the point with my college coach where I said, I don't think I feel like safe enough in the universe to get into a position that's like that vulnerable. Like I need to be a little tucked.
Yeah.
And he kind of got that. And again, I'll have a couple of kids every year that I'm like, "Oh, okay. We're not, this is going to be someone that we're just not going
Yeah.
to ever really open up the neck." And I get
Right.
it. That's fine. There's plenty of other technical
Yeah.
stuff we can work on.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've been stressing the fact that, the quote unquote throw your head back move. I keep calling it, let's disassociate this part because the raising of your chin to let somebody slit your throat is like,
Yeah, it's like, I
and
think it's like a primal brain, sort of
right.
animal
Let's
brain kind
let's
of
put that here. Yeah,
response.
the fetal curl,
Yes.
like you said, right? So this is protective, right? You
Yes.
you see if someone's getting beaten with clubs, what do? They ball up, and
Right.
you put everything around you, and your ribs protect your back, and your arms and everything. They might break those, but they're not going to get your internal organs, and you can survive a heck of a beating, But it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
the protection thing. And then I've been telling them, pull your shoulders towards your heels and your head is just going along for the ride, you know?
Yeah, explaining it in a way that's not like about the head so much. What
Yeah.
I normally say is I say, okay, stand like this. Now put your arm back. Oh, look, you just arched your back. That's
Right.
all I want you to do is just watch your hand go over the
Yeah.
bar and your butt's gonna automatically get out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that too. The single armors for sure. Were you a single armor or a double armor when you jumped?
Definitely a single arm for sure.
Single
Yeah,
arm.
like this one to just snap
Yeah.
back down.
So the single arm go like that, the backside arm drops, that's fine. And then I like more and more I see both men and women that are reaching that arm, but then trying to connect it to their heel, you know, where
Yeah.
they close the loop. So you get
Yes.
the back arch and you get shorter and you start to spin. Yeah, it's
No,
really
I
cool.
have never thought about explaining it that way, but I definitely have a few kids that would maybe benefit from hearing it a different way,
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah, you can touch your either side too. You can touch your palm to your heel, or you can touch the back side of your hand to your
Sure.
heel. And then I have several. I'll remember to send you one. My favorite is a gal named Betsabe Paez, who is Argentinian, and one of her jumps came through my feed one time, and I'm just watching. She's a little pixie. She can't be more than 5'5", right? And she's running, and they show all of a sudden it goes slow motion on her curve, and then she goes up into the single, and I mean, she just has this beautiful teardrop, perfect layout. You're just
Oh,
like, and it's almost all layout. Like she didn't really ride her knee that well on that
yeah,
particular
I
jump.
feel like
And
there's
I'm
kind
like,
of some different styles over
yeah,
the bar, and
oh sure,
I want my kids to be like in the diamond position with their
uh-huh,
legs over the bar. I like it when the
yeah,
knee stays up, but some of them like to get in the more of the, kind of like this position
yeah,
where they straighten out.
yeah,
For me, it's just harder to get my butt out of the way like that. And I feel like,
right.
with the knee staying open and kind of that diamond shape in the legs, it seems easier to me, but
I
not everybody's built like me, so
well, the dynamics of the spin are so interesting because some people spin outrageously well and they don't have an ounce of flexibility. You know, I watch Bondarenko from the Ukraine, who's now retired, but back in the when him and Barshim were both the talk of the town in 2016, they both jumped 7-11 at the same meet, and he's just ungodly talented. He was 6'8", about 160 pounds, ran like a deer, you know, and then in my opinion, not the most fabulous takeoff mechanics, but he was just so fast and so tall. It was like all he needed was a little, you know, and then, but he's
yeah.
a mile out. And then as he got up on top, you know, if you figure 6'8" with your arms extended has got to be over 8 feet tall. So he's getting to here. And then all of a sudden he would reach and he'd push his hips forward a little bit, but it wasn't a work of art or anything like that, but he just got smaller. I always tell the kids, I go, you're going to go from tall to small when you're getting horizontal, you know, to the ground. You know,
Oh,
that's when you're
yeah.
going to start to spin. And he's just like, you know, I watched him and I'm like, oh, well, he spins like a top, but he's landing almost on his hands and feet like a cat, like it's a complete spin around flip.
Interesting.
And
Yeah, I've
all
seen
three
a
of those
couple of
guys
people
did
that
that.
land like that.
If you watch the 2016 Olympics on YouTube, the final, they introduce everybody, and there's some jumpers I really like in there, like Brandon Stark had to be just a kid back in 2016. We're almost what 9 years later. So he made the Olympics in all three ones: 2016, 221, and 2021 and 2025 or four. But on that one, they introduced all these people, and then they just cut right to the chase, and it's just Bondarenko, Derek Druin from Canada, and Barshim, and it's just clockwork. And the guy coming from the same side as him was Derek Druin from Canada, and his rotation is the same, but it's prettier, and he's even faster. 6'5" was a former decathlete, but he dominated the two of them, and that was the eye-opening part because I guess he'd won the worlds the year before, and he came into the Olympics, and I think he just goes, I can beat both of these guys, and he just spanked them both. Like he didn't miss until the bar got to 710. He made everything on his first jump, and they were really good jumps. There was no leaners or nothing where
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
like,
like
oh,
solid
it
clearances.
looks like he's starting to, slow down a little bit. It's like, no, up, over, spin, land on your hands and feet like a cat, get out and wave. It's like rinse, wash, rinse, repeat. It's the same thing. So,
I do often wish that I could train her because she would be one heck of a high jumper.
oh man, cats are amazing. Well,
Yeah. Oh my God.
cats are like
You know what's
90%.
funny is I actually have a Plyos box, like one of
Yeah,
the foam ones, sitting here in my living room because I'll work out with it from time to time. And she loves to jump up on it. And I'm like,
I
God, you
bet.
make it look so easy and you're like this big. I got
Right,
like fully grown people cannot
right.
hardly do that.
Well, I think we learned I was a kinesiology major at UCLA, and they taught us that cats are like 90% fast twitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they either cruise around really slow or they pow and they just accelerate from
Zoomies.
nowhere.
Yes.
Yeah. They can
Yes.
just take
Well,
off in the blink
the
of an eye.
sprint methodology that we use at my high school is the feed the cats, which I
Yes,
just feel like I love the metaphor of that, and I just
I
feel like,
do.
oh, that's accurate. That's
I
accurate
love it.
right there.
That's awesome. You bring that up. I had Tony Holler on as a guest. It's been a couple years, and he was already pretty popular back then, and now I think he's just off the charts. And if people haven't heard of him, it's just because they're not paying attention. Because
Or
like
they maybe understand the methodology but aren't familiar with the name of it. You know what I mean?
right.
Like they might already kind of be doing it, but they don't know what it is.
I still tend to think that I don't think so yet. I think it's one of those things like he's not at way ahead of his time anymore. He was, and there are enough people that have bought into it and have started to copy and maybe modify and do whatever they do on their own. But it's still kind of groundbreaking in a lot of ways for many coaches, I think, because in my opinion, track and field athletes are almost always to a kid overtrained terribly, because like you said, people don't know what they're doing. So they're not being watched, and let's face it, the high jump was fun. Like every day you would try to
Yeah,
jump.
and you don't really
You
feel like,
yeah,
oh, it's just a few seconds and it's only 10
right.
steps, da, 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 and you could do 20 of them in like five
Yeah,
minutes.
exactly. You're taking all these jumps and you're like, oh, I can keep going, and then, oh man, you notice your shin a little bit, but okay. And then maybe you hang it up but you come back the next day, and you keep doing it again. So it's like you're getting over volumed. And I think, the sports that I watch that overtrain their athletes are many. The ones that are starting to do something about it, football, basketball,
Yeah, definitely
but they're
football.
paying their athletes so much money that it makes sense. If you're at the top of that profession and you're watching your athletes, you go, look, the regular season in basketball means nothing in the NBA. I need LeBron James, I need Steph Curry, I need my guys to be healthy when we get to the playoffs. The regular
Yes.
season doesn't matter. I
Yes.
need them to be healthy when we need them to win games. When it's
Yes.
like this however many teams are in the tournament, and make their run. And then, the same thing with football, obviously. Your guys have to be healthy. If you lose a couple players at the wrong positions in a football, you can derail a whole football season really quickly.
Yeah.
But these other sports, soccer, just terrible offenders. Those guys run around like crazy all the time. Volleyball. I watch these kids 3-hour volleyball practices the day before the game where they play for another 4 hours. And all you do in volleyball is jump up and down over and over and over and over and over and over and over all the time. So you're watching them, and those kids go, I want to come out and high jump. I'm like, that's not going to go well. I just tell them, I go, you're over volume. I had one kid come out in 20 years at this one school, and he came out. First day he jumped 5'4", 5'6", and I go, you can really jump. I taught him just a couple things, and he picked everything up so fast. Next time he came out from volleyball, he's dead, could barely move, and I'm just like, and I knew it. I knew it was going to happen. And I go, you know what? Come see me when you can. Would all I really needed to do was get him to be qualified for league finals. So we
Yeah.
gave him one meet, got him a mark, and then he went to league finals, jumped 5'6" for me and got sixth place and scored,
Nice.
like,
That's awesome.
which was great. But I'm looking at the whole time going, he could have been a great high jumper, but it's like, it's not a good double for the men volleyball
For
season
me,
is
I feel
spring,
like these are the primarily I get wrestlers, basketball players, and football players if they're not, just a one sport athlete or whatever.
right?
My favorite, definitely the basketball guys. My least
Basketball.
favorite is the football guys.
Hmm.
With the basketball guys, they already know how to do like a breakaway layup. And I'm like,
Yep.
this is really a lot like a breakaway layup, but so many of them come in like they're dunking and they kind of get that sideways
Right.
approach. And I'm like, come in like a layup. And you don't lay it up over the front, right? You come around the side. That's what we're doing. And then with my football guys, the problem is they want to be in a defensive stance
Mhm.
all the time. And I'm like, no, 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 you got to run tall. We're getting our
Yes.
center of gravities over the bar. So if your center of
Yeah.
gravity's down here,
Yep.
now I'm like, no one's going to tackle you down there. Like, stand up.
Right. Right. Yeah. And then I had a great kid came out 2 weeks now. Io, his dad's bringing him out. He's 10 years old, and he's just this great kid, but he's just all elbows and knees. And the first drill we did, he got his knee up like 5 inches over the bar, and then I probably moved it up a little too high, too fast, and he knocked the next one off and landed, and tears and all. I felt so bad, and then he came back this last week, and his first move was that lean way forward and get the arms back, and I go, dude.
I hate that.
When
Yeah.
your leg is like this, you can't put your chest here because your chest is in the way of your knee drive. I said your knee drive is your most important thing. So lean back, get out of the way of your knee so it can come up, and I think he got it. But yeah,
I
that.
love how you explain that so like differently than I do. Because what I always tell my kids is like, if your arms are way back here, then you're probably running like 2 or 3 steps with the arms. And if you're not
Right,
just coming in with a normal stride, I know you're slowing down.
right.
You know what I mean? But yeah, I like the way you explain that. It's funny how like you're saying the same thing, but we're saying it like the way I
Yeah.
normally explain it to my kids is different. But I
I
like,
like what you're saying too. The speed is important. We just did a clinic, some very, I think all of them probably higher respected as coaches than myself. I'm my old coach, Doug Nordquist, who made the team in '84. His coach and my coach, Alan Hankel, Alan put the whole thing together. I asked him if he wanted to have Jeremy Fisher do it, from the Olympic Training Center down in Chula Vista. He came up, so we had the four of us, and then we had coaches, Kevin. We had this great team of everybody came out, and the point was most of these kids aren't coachable in high school. We've all had varying degrees of success, blah blah blah, and we broke it down. So what are the number one things we need to teach them? And what you just mentioned was at the top of the list, which was start moving and accelerate
yeah.
all the way through the takeoff with a high center of mass, like you said. And that's where I tell them you got to get your knees up and you got to kick yourself in the butt with your feet. I go, you don't see people dragging their feet, and jumping really, really high. You might see some explosive kid in high school can get away with a big foot drag and jump 7'4",
Always
7'5"
the
sometimes.
boys. The boys love that
Yeah.
foot drag, especially
But
the
if you
boys without a
drag it,
coach.
I had one kid on a podcast, it was 2 years ago now, is Fabian Delrud. He's Swedish. He's 6'9". He jumped 7'7" 3/4", and you can see the dust trail from the scrape in the
And a
jump.
lot of them, they got duct tape or whatever on the front of their shoe because they don't even
Yeah.
have there's a big hole there now,
Yeah. It's
But yeah, no, the way I always explain it to the kids is high jump is about converting speed to height. So if you come in second gear, we're gonna get second gear out.
yeah, yeah,
And then I try to remind them also like um at no point am I ever going to ask you what your vertical is. I don't care what your vertical is.
right,
That doesn't matter here. If that's what we were doing here, we wouldn't
right.
run at all. I
Yeah,
care about how fast you are and how tall you are.
yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, like we were talking about the jumping priorities. I have the three A's. I go ABT, always be tall. ABCs is easy to remember, always be cycling. And then I go, for you lawyers, ABA is always be accelerating, like the American Bar
Yeah,
Association.
yeah, I got it.
I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, you remember those. And then I'm like, what my first thing is, get your hands up and get that knee up. And
Yes.
please leave them
Yes.
up. Don't
Yes.
don't
I
start
tell them
popping
it's
that
like the
knee.
golf follow through. I want you to stand there
Yeah,
and watch the golf ball. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like I need you
Hit
to
that
stay
position.
here.
And once you start to go up, then I tell them pretty much immediately after takeoff, you can start doing things with these arms as long as they're not just waving around and creating trouble. If you drop, I've looked at every style of takeoff, and almost everybody's backside arm will just drop to their
Yes, they
foot.
just want it out of the way.
Or they might be reaching them both back behind their head, but this side, either the connect or that you can bring that one back, but it's like I'm like, I want to get as much out of your takeoff as possible. And I go, it's too many times you see this really quick here and down.
Right, right. The knee comes up to the waist
Yeah,
and then they snap it back down. I'm like, no, no, no. See how it can go all the way up here
yeah,
to like your chest? That's where it
yes,
needs to go.
exactly. And then I show them, I just go, you start practicing your layout. I said, everything goes in sequence. So I teach it as 5 phases. I go, you run straight, you run on the curve, you get your takeoff. It's phase 3. Lots of things happening there. Stage 4, the flight. I said flight is really the only phase in the high jump that gets longer as you get better. I said everything else gets shorter and
That
quicker,
is so true.
faster, right? But your
Yes.
flight should be getting longer as you get better. And I said the layout, in my estimation, should be the same every time. If you can learn where you are in space and figure out the timing of it, it's like, okay, you watch Barshim, man, the angle that he takes off and he waits until he's really getting close to completely horizontal, but his head is always past the bar. It's
Yeah.
gone up and gone past the plane of the bar, and then he pulls his shoulders down and his hips come up and he does the spin. But I swear he's looking down the bar. I've watched it enough times where I think he literally goes, as soon as I can see straight down the bar, it's time to go. And so
Interesting.
that's an
Yeah, no,
easy
some of
cue.
those Olympic guys, they're taking off like 2, 3 arm lengths away from the
Yeah.
bar. And I'm just like, how is that physically possible? And then
Yeah.
they just
Well, they're so fast. And then you watch those
crazy.
guys that can dunk from the free throw line and you realize, well, yeah, and they don't even leave their knees up because I go, the game is different. I tell the kids, I go, when you're dunking a basketball, you don't have to worry about landing on your back and
That's
doing a
true.
180. You're just going
Yeah,
straight up. So
that's
the
true.
getting air part is one part of the deal, but getting that knee to come around and spin your back to the bar and then letting yourself
Well,
fall.
you know what it is. With basketball, you want your hand in the cookie jar. With high jump, your whole body
Yeah.
is going in the cookie jar. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's very different.
Yeah, absolutely. But the dunking from the free throw line, I've noticed a couple times. There's a guy named, hang on a second. Oh, a helicopter decided to fly by with the window open. The guy that I had on, it's been 3 years now, I think. Jumpman Westner. He was a 7'5" jumper at I think originally was at Ohio, the University of Miami, Ohio, one of those, in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
but then he transferred to Florida State and he was jumping 7'5" and a quarter in 2021. And he was 6'3", like 205, like pretty heavy for a high jumper. And he said he felt better when he was heavier, big, big power guy, but
Definitely.
routinely shows himself dunking from past the free throw line on his,
Wow.
taking off a good foot behind the line and just long extension and just, and it's like, you're watching that going, wow, 7'5" makes sense. But like you said, it's not just that. You got to turn and you got to fall and all that stuff. It doesn't hurt, I'm sure, to have a little bit of vertical, but yeah, the knee ride, I call it knee drive and ride is my number one thing. I go,
Yeah, no, I like the way you explain that too. I'm normally
oh,
just tell them, please let yourself get up,
yeah,
then over.
yeah, get up first, right, and then from farther away, and literally you have to keep moving back as the bar goes up, like you're saying. It's like
Yeah.
because the parabola changes, and like you're saying, if you're going to speed up, I always tell the kids too, I go, your odds of hitting vertical go down the faster you're running, unless you learn how to lean and you do all this
Yes,
stuff.
you've
But
got to be able to hold on to it.
even then, if farther out and you're hitting the right lean and everything, and I just saw this, I was telling you about the Tamberi video. I'll send it to you, but I took some shots of it too, some stills, because it's easier for me to show them stuff. But I go, when you see the lean, it looks like when he puts his foot down, his head is a good 4 feet behind his foot,
Yeah.
like straight tilted back here. I
Yeah.
said, if you drop a line straight down from his head, his foot is way out in front. By the
Yeah.
time he gets through there, he's going to be close to vertical. But on
Yes.
his video, the 239 jump, which is what, 710 and a quarter, and then 240, he hits here, and when he goes up, as he's leaving the ground, he's hitting a position that I call inside vertical. He didn't come up to straight up vertical, but he didn't wash through. He actually came up and pushed away so hard that he looks like he's trying to go away from the bar. And he
Yeah.
still straightens up and goes into his layout because I keep telling him, I go, Mr. Momentum will not be defeated. You're not strong enough to get away from your own momentum. Your mass times your velocity flying at the bar in some ways is your own worst enemy. You have to learn how to, like you're saying, get in the right position, get back, get that foot out in front, get your arms ready, and hit through there so that you can buy yourself some time. I said, you always
Yeah.
want to buy yourself time before you got to deal with the bar. I said, if you got to deal with the bar in the middle of your takeoff, you're too close. and
Yeah.
and it screws up the timing of everything. Because if you go, if
True.
you literally go, look, first phase is straight, second phase is curved, third is takeoff. I said, I want you to finish taking off. I want you to
Yes. Yes.
fly. I want you to fly for a while. Then I want you to lay out. But I said, if you start doing your head back and popping that knee down, either just before, during, or after your takeoff, I said, you're putting you're putting phase five in the middle of phase three. You can't do that. I go, there has to be a complete separation of all those phases. And yes, it might only be a tenth of a second. It might only be, less. It could be hundreds of seconds, but there's still a separation. You can still see it when you break it down on film. And
Yeah.
learning that is half the battle, I think. And there's always going to be some that are just savants. They just do it.
Well, I think
No idea
one
how.
one of the things that I see, because especially because I'm dealing with high school boys, is there's always kind of that ego, that sort of the cockiness of, oh, well, this guy starts further back than me, or this
Right,
guy, that guy scissored whatever in warm-ups,
right.
and then and I understand that's kind of the culture of it, and that's fine. But one of the things that I noticed, we had a meet last week where one of the other jumpers was like 15 feet wide,
Hmm.
basically coming in with his basketball dunk approach. And I was like, well, do you see now why I'm telling you bigger is not better when
Right.
it comes to how wide this approach is? If you can
Hmm.
hold on to it here, we want you to hold on to it here. And
Yeah.
then I always tell them too, like around about step 8, if you don't have a little bit of that feeling like when your car is about to spin out, like kind of this oh shit feeling, if
Right.
you don't feel a little bit of that, you didn't run fast enough and you
Yeah.
didn't like hang into this
Lean.
curve.
Yeah.
No, it feels like better feel like you're in a race car here,
Yeah.
Like I love that feeling when the kids are kind of like, "Oh, like,
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yes, that's it. That's when it feels right. When you scare yourself a little bit right there because you really had to hang on to it."
Yes. And you gotta push the envelope. It's funny that you mentioned that because I kind of go through phases where I've just been through the whole, you're too close to the bar, so let's get you far enough away where you can finish everything. But some people, that I've learned this the hard way, because I thought, I had a guy 5 years ago now, and Jack, if you're out there, God bless you. Jack Weissman was one of my favorite kids in high school. It took me 3 years to recruit him. When I finally got him, it was because one of the guys that he used to routinely kick the crap out of, I started coaching him and he got better, and he beat Jack at the Masters meet. Jack didn't make it through the Masters meet. Kevin went to state. And so the next year I finally got Jack. He finally said, all right, you got me. Let's get to work. And I was like, this is going to be easy. I go, Jack's one of those bar crowders. He's too close. The knee
Easy
comes
fix.
around on a pretty good angle, but he has to ditch it right away. And he was really flexible and he would get away with it on
Yeah,
all these heights, but 6'6" was the sticking point. He couldn't get over 6'6" all
right.
the time. Sometimes yes, but in clutch situations, usually no. And so I was like, okay, I got it. We started training. Literally, I got back from the state meet June 1st. We started training the next week. And it was like I saw him at least once a week during the summer, sometimes twice. And I'm telling you, we went on a 9-month odyssey where I'm just like, dude, all we have to do is move you farther back. And
Yeah.
he would not. It didn't matter where you put him to start. You could say, move back, count the same number of steps.
They'll run it the
He would
same way.
cheat. He would step over the mark,
Yeah.
or he would, we put a piece of tape down on the ground. That meant nothing, nothing. He'd step on the tape, he'd step past the tape. Then we
Yeah.
put a piece of foam down there. It was bigger, same result. Stepped right on the foam, wouldn't work. And so, I mean, I tried everything, and it was like I developed this thing called the roll out the bar drill. I put another bar on the ground and I put it right up against the standards. And I said, run and do a scissor. So he runs and does a scissor.
That's a good
Okay.
idea.
Then
Yeah.
I moved the bar. I rolled the
Yeah.
bar one revolution out.
Yeah.
So about 2 inches farther out. I said, now you're gonna have to move your approach back. So we had to figure out where you are. You keep doing the same approach, but we're just gonna be farther and farther out.
Yeah.
So we got to where he was a
Good.
good 5 feet away from the bar. He could still run at full speed. He was a talented kid. He
Yes.
ran super fast and light, and he got 5 feet out and he hit it. And he was scissoring this. He was scissoring 5 feet. He started close, and we just kept moving him out. And at the end of that, he finally got to a place where he was looking. He's like, "This is way out here," and he was still going up, and
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
was making the pit. And he's like, "Okay, now that was the beginning of change." But it was like, and I thought after all that, then Jack went on and jumped 6'10" at the Masters meet to win, and went to state and came in third, jumping 6'9" the very next week. And it's, mission accomplished. Great job. He worked so hard. I was so proud of him. And I was thinking, okay, from now on, when I get these people that are crowding the bar, I know exactly what to do.
No, I literally just came from a practice where one of my girls that's going to be competing at the Inland Empire Championships on Saturday is a bar crowder. And I keep moving her back and moving her back and moving her back. And she has these like meltdowns. She's a ninth grader. She kind of has these meltdowns if she gets too far back. And I'm like, this is a compliment. The further back
Right.
you are is because you're running faster. You're getting more aggressive. Like this is not a meltdown thing.
Right.
But I'm going to try that bar drill with her. But you mentioned about just telling people to step back. And I kind of had this interesting thing a couple of weeks ago. One of the other high jump coaches in my league went to college with me and we competed together since,
Uh-huh.
we're still in the same town as our college.
Right.
So now we're coaching together. So he was not able to attend this invitational and he only had this one girl there. And I was like, you know what, I'll help you out and I'll give her some feedback and stuff. So I was just like, you just need to move back. Just go back. She PR'd, right? And then I've noticed since then, she has not PR'd. She hasn't hit that same height again. I didn't check for yesterday's meet, but
Right.
I'm very curious to kind of follow up with him about
Right.
what's going on. But I'm going to see them jump on Saturday, so I'll kind of get some feedback on that. But yeah, I just kind
Are
of
you
a
guys,
fun thing.
are you going to Mount Sac?
I am not. Our school, we had a pole vaulter and a girl that she's a thrower qualified. But yeah, our my top high jumpers right now are both ninth graders.
Mhm.
I have a boy who's gone over 6 feet as a ninth grader, and I mean, we checked. It ranked him, I think, number uh, 10 in the nation or something for ninth grade boys. Who's
Really?
yeah, so that's very exciting. But yeah, I don't really have any like varsity
Right.
level. Though all those people graduated last year, and now I'm kind of starting fresh again. So,
Yeah. Well, sometimes you get a whole new crew and you got to teach them
well, I
now.
mean, I get four
Kind of
years
fun.
with these kids,
Yeah.
so it's exciting. It's
Yeah.
exciting.
I had a group like that. I work at Redondo here in LA. So I had not this summer, but the summer before, they had this little feeder meet. All the junior highs came, and I saw a couple of the kids were pretty talented. And I said, "You guys need to come see me." I basically recruited them not only to be private clients, but to, right there to the school.
Yeah,
And you know, there's like four or five of them, and they're all ninth grade girls. So now this is their sophomore year. And then Riley just went crazy a couple weeks ago and jumped. She's had two double PR days this year. So she went like 4'11" and 5'1" to get the winter qualifier for Arcadia. And then a couple
nice.
weeks after that, she went 5'2" and 5'4" at the same meet. And I go,
Congrats.
good golly. You'd love watching her because she's super tall and she just has learned how to run and cycle beautifully. And then after that, it's a crapshoot. Like, where is she? She's usually still too close, and she's developed a couple kind of weird habits with the knee drive where, since she's so close, even when she gets it up here, she tries to pop her hip down. But I've gotten the knee drive angle so good that it's almost impossible to do the one and then the other. But when she does it right, and she got 5'3" this weekend at Arcadia, which I was really pleased with, and she almost made 5'5". And so she's like
Congrats.
5'10". She's really fast. So you were talking about the speed and everything, and I just keep telling her, I say, hey, I said, what's the magic checklist? I go, let's look at what you were given. I said, you're tall, you're 5'10", you run like a deer, you have super high cycling speed. I go, you're flexible, and you're fast. So you're tall, you're fast, you're flexible. I go, my magic checklist is used up. You've got every
Oh yeah.
gift that you need.
I'll be out in
Like,
town at like the boba shop, and if I see a kid that looks like they might be in high school and
right,
they are built like a high jumper, I'll be like, "Hey, is there any chance you go to Redlands High School?"
right,
Or I'm just like, I don't care where we are. If we're in Redlands, I'm recruiting
yep,
people that look like high jumpers. Even just we had a meet yesterday at kind of the next town over in Ukaipa, and they don't have a high jump coach. They have like a jumps coach, but he always is hanging out at long and triple,
right,
so they're kind of down there by themselves. And this has never happened to me before. I mean, it was kind of a compliment, but also weird. But he came over while we're competing and he's like, "Do you have any feedback for me?" And I was like, "Oh, well, you're snapping when you get over the bar. You need to, be in an arch and then kick your feet, not snap. So I tell him that, and then I thought this would be like a one-time thing. He came over again, and then he sent his other teammate over to ask me for feedback, and I thought this is weird. I feel like a little awkward. And so I went over to him after when we were done, and I said, if you want to high jump with me, you need to come to Redlands High School.
Right.
So I don't know what what other sports are, I know what you're doing here at Ukaipa, but if you want to work with me, I do Saturday practices. I come in to meet kids sixth period. We do plyos drills, jump work. We do like, it's the real deal if you want to work with me. But I just thought like, I don't know. I felt kind of weird about it. I know
Right.
down at the long and triple, all the coaches are raking together and whatever, and they
Right.
they will both give a jumper feedback. You'll hear from both coaches, oh, that was good, or work on this.
Right.
But not that doesn't usually happen at high jump. So I don't know.
Is this a paid clinic that they're going to, or is it just you guys volunteering
No,
your time?
it's just, I'm just telling them like to switch schools, like to
Yeah.
transfer schools. I mean, that's a thing now. I feel like the kids, they don't like the football coach, they'll just go to the other high school.
Well, they're
I
just
don't
copying
remember
college
it
now,
being
right?
like that back in the day,
Yeah.
but now everybody's like a prima donna about everything. So,
Well, it's like the transfer portal in college, right? They're like they're out of there. You can go almost anywhere now. You don't have to stay in your zip codes or anything like that. And
oh no,
always
yeah,
go
it's
private instead if you want.
crazy how and you'll see kids that have been at three different high schools. You're like, oh, you're with Beaumont now. Oh,
Yeah.
you're at Cajon now. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I get it based on the culture, but I think it's definitely filtered down a couple layers, and I see it only continuing, because if anybody's not really paying attention, all the great sports teams throughout time, like if you don't think basketball and football players at colleges have been getting paid money, not paying attention, just not paying attention. They're getting paid. Now it's not hidden anymore. And now they've flipped the tables and they can, if it used to be if you didn't want to stay at a university anymore, you tried to transfer somewhere else, you lost a year of eligibility and you got nothing. Now they're like they could just have had a really good year and another team comes along with deeper pockets and says, "We'll pay you twice as much." And they're like, "Thanks, guys," and they're out.
oh yeah, no, I was telling you
And
about our thrower that's going to be at Mount Sac. She's ranked number one in the country right now for discus,
mhm,
and she started out, I think maybe 10th or whatever at the beginning of the year, and she was going to be going to Louisiana, and then she popped out a 173 or something at one of our dual meets, and she's like 25 feet ahead of the next person now. And she's like, I'm taking back my letter of intent. And now she's getting flown
right,
out. I believe next week she's flying to two different schools and just like
yeah.
totally starting over again.
Well, it's hard to make money at track and field, even at the collegiate level. But if she does manage to land maybe an SEC school or a Big Ten school, they've got deeper pockets. I still don't know if track athletes are really gonna get paid. Like what I had Jeremy Fisher was on. He's been on a couple different times, and the last time, which I think is probably about a year ago now, we were both bemoaning the fact that even the highest level jumpers don't get paid, and this is at the world level. These guys. He goes, you do not get paid unless you are breaking a world record.
Well, who's sponsoring high jumpers? Come on. Like you're
Yeah,
sponsoring 100-meter runners. That's
yeah.
who gets
The
sponsored.
sprinters get sponsored. The 100, the 200, maybe the 4x1, 4x4, and then interestingly enough, because they have their own culture, is the distance runners. The distance
That's
runners,
true. That's true. They have the whole marathon culture and whatever.
exactly.
It's a whole thing.
Well, you got a whole group of people that feel guilty if they don't go running. You know what I
That's
mean?
true too.
That's the way I think of it. I go, if you wanted to start a club, you just go tack up a notice somewhere and go, if you're reading this and you don't feel like you're running enough, come see me this Sunday. And you'd
No, they
probably,
never run enough. Like
yeah,
you're never getting enough miles.
yeah, there'd be like 20 people show up and you got your club. You say, okay, these are the dues, and we'll go running. We'll talk about the apps and what you guys should be eating and all, it's like,
Well,
that's
that's
like,
why there's like 100 distance running clubs for every one
yeah,
like legit track club, or
yeah.
even less for a jumps club.
Right, right. Yeah, I was calling mine, the sky high and fly jump camps because my first thought was to do that in the summers, and I did, but it wasn't a camp because it wouldn't be just like a week. and nobody could pin me down because I'm still a school teacher. So I'd be like, it'd be in my summer, which is my off period. But I was like, okay, well, I don't want to work all week. Let's take 2 or 3 days because this is my vacation at the same time. So I
Yeah.
like to play golf a little bit and I like to just take a deep breath. So it really was, I wanted to change it after a while to clinics because I'd rather put on a good clinic that's organized and has maybe a couple drills for each of those 5 phases in a couple hours. And, if you get enough kids there, there's enough rest built in where they're not killing themselves, right? You see, you have that. And then we eventually switched it to lab because I've come up with the idea, like you said, that, I don't have a formula that is, this is the way I did it. So this is the way you do it. It's like, I've been watching too long. I've seen so many different things like you're talking about that work. I mean, I used to make statements that I call universals that are so bad. I laugh at myself now. I used to say, I don't think anybody can scrape their foot and jump higher than 7.5. No, that
Yeah.
went away a couple of
Yeah.
years ago. I watched a kid jump 7.5 at Mount Sac from Texas. And then just later that year, I had Fabian Delrin on who jumped 7.7. I saw the video, and then somebody sent me a DM on one of my posts and said, Charles Austin scraped his foot when he jumped 7.10 and a half at the Olympics, and so did Sotomayor. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah, and
I gotta
I have
remember, note to
literally done the
self.
same thing. I was
Yeah.
watching some Olympic footage. I normally watch the women, but I was watching some footage and I was like, "Oh, the Ukrainian lady, I'm like, she gets into that like legs together
Yeah.
over the bar." And I'm always telling my kids, "Don't snap that knee down. Keep it up.
Yes.
I want that follow through." And I'm like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
guess I gotta go eat crow on that one."
Well, the other thing too is I would say that the gist of it is always still true. Like I don't think it's beneficial to scrape your foot, but I think if you're talented enough, you can
That
get
is a
away
good
with it.
point. It's not
So
ideal.
what I saw Mahuchich, the same thing that you saw. I see an incredible knee drive angle. I see the high arm and everything else, but I believe that 6.10 3/4 jump, she's still too close to the bar because the first thing she does after that knee comes across is she kicks it straight out. And I've seen that enough times because I've coached a couple guys that do it and I've seen other guys do it. It's like a weird counterbalance thing where they kick that leg out to keep from going into the bar too quickly and as
Yeah,
an attempt to kind of get that knee down so they
balancing.
can start popping it because as soon as they stick it out straight they'll hook it back and get into a pretty good position, but it's just a weird, it's nothing that you would teach someone. Like I
Yeah.
would say, hey, drive that knee up and then stick it out because I don't think you should ever try to get longer once
Yeah.
you've left the ground.
Yeah,
And
no,
so,
I am getting a lot
yeah.
better at telling my kids, and I mean, we're quirky people, high jumpers, and there's a lot of weird rituals people have between jumps and before they're
Right.
starting, and I get that. I know that's part of the culture. But I'm getting a little better at kind of telling my kids, like, okay, if you're going to do this thing, as long as all these elements are met, I can work with it. For example,
Yes.
at my practice I just had right now, my ninth grade boy, his like coming in a straight line, gets to his fifth step, and then the sixth step, right? So his foot's here. Sixth step, he steps over, so he bows out
Yeah.
on me and gets wider. One
Right.
of my
Yeah, I call
basketball
it a
guys,
jump cut, like a jump cut, because he's cutting on the
yes,
inside foot, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I'm like, I'm sure that's coming from basketball. I know you've been doing basketball for longer. I know it's in your muscle memory. As long as you're gonna like, if you're coming in at this trajectory, I'll deal with it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I need these elements to be met. I don't want it,
Right.
because he was cutting really sharp right there. I'm like, you can't button hook it. It's a
You're gonna lose some
gradual.
speed doing that too, but yeah.
Yeah.
I've actually started taking that. It's funny you said that, Tracy, because I just went through this thing. Like I said, I watched the Tamberi video and I'm like, he's pushing so hard to the left, right? Because he's a left footer. And I said, you realize that in order to push left with your left foot, it needs to be way over on the right of you. It can't be under you because if it's under you, it can only push you up or to the right. It has to
That's
be
true.
across you. So
That's true.
when you're running through the curve, and I've said the same thing as you for years. I even stood behind kids. I go, look, I want you to run at your turn mark. I'm
Oh yeah,
standing
no, I
right
put
behind you
cones
right
up to
now.
keep him in line.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
said, I'm standing behind you. So if you veer off course and I see your turn mark, that means you're not running straight at your turn mark.
Yeah.
that means you're running in the general direction of your turn mark, and it's not very accurate, which is going to be hard to replicate.
Yeah.
So you need to learn the definition of the word straight at. So I want you to run straight at it and then go in. But like you said, lots of times when they go to turn, if they plant their right foot, they're just going to cut like a football player would running a post. I
Yeah.
think it's hard to do a very smooth turn with the outside foot. So what do you see people do a lot of times is they'll start their curve on the right, because I teach usually a 5-step curve, and I think a lot of times you could argue 5, 4, 6, depends on the person.
Whatever. Yeah.
General shape, it doesn't really matter. And so, but I've noticed if they do start the curve, plant my right foot, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on my curve. Then if I go left, right, and I haven't really come over much, now I've just gotten deeper. So I'm getting closer to the bar and I
Yeah. Now you're
still haven't
sharper.
turned. And that's where you get those people to just hang a left
Yeah.
and then they're running straight down the bar. And then
Yes.
if they don't like it, they take 2 more steps and they bring the standard into play, or
Of
they
course
jump
they
out of
don't
the
like
pit.
it because they're running straight now. The whole point of
Right.
coming in on a curve has been taken away. You're
Yes. And they're
standing
running
upright
straight
now.
down
You're
the
not
bar
leaning.
and they don't want to take off because they know they're going to knock it off. But then they think, well, I'm still going to get my feet right. And then sometimes they can hit the far standard or jump out of the pit. He's like, okay, this is all bad. But I took that same idea that you said, because the turn that Tamberi is running is so quick. And I watched him a couple times and he literally goes, he's from here and then it's wham. I mean, he just drops into it. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's
that
sharp.
looks a lot like that jump cut. I'm like, so let's just say that you can do that move as long as you don't wander out like you're talking about, because that's
Yeah,
all
no,
that
my thing
bothered
was
me.
he was going really shallow on the curve, and I'm like, if you can come 2 feet more this way, we're
Right.
good. I don't, as long as you are land at the bar at this angle,
Yeah.
that's all I really care about.
Right. Absolutely. Well, hey, I could do this all night, but
I
my
know,
wife
for real.
my wife will get mad at me, and then we won't get to do it again. So, but we got to set up something where I'd be happy to look at your stuff if you'd like. And I'm not really that close to Redlands. I do the bulk of my work is up here at Redondo. I spend 2 days every week at Yorba Linda, which is
Okay, kind of halfway.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I'll definitely tell
Um,
my kids about that you're doing clinics nearby because the only clinics I was aware of were like in Oklahoma or something. So I almost guarantee you my ninth grade boy would be interested in doing that.
awesome. Yeah. And but let's
And then you can watch him step over on the six.
There you go. Got that
Yeah.
going for us. But if you get a minute, send me some videos of you if
Okay.
you want, and I can, because I I'm one of those people. I'm just like, if I see something, I've been at it for a while, and I'll usually be like, okay, and it sounds to me like any other two coaches that know what they're doing. You and I, like you said, we might not be using the same exact terminology, but it's pretty much the same
Same
mechanics.
philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like immediately. You're like, yeah, you're too close, you're too this, you're too that, you're too flat. There's all kinds of things you can spot in just about 2 seconds. But it is weird how I can do that for everybody else. And I remember coaching myself way back in the day. So it's just recently that I've been the way that I think that I look and the way that I look are two totally different things. Because I'll see myself and, oh yeah, you got your hands up really high on that, and you hit that layout, and the bar didn't wiggle, so I knew I didn't hit it. And when I go, okay, here, because I told him to film me, so I look at it and I'm like, man, that doesn't look anything like I remember. It was like, I got to stop watching myself on video. It's like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm not going to take the whole, you're doing pretty good for a 61-year-old guy. I'm like, oh man, I got to work on some technique.
It's hard. I feel like the conversation at every master's meet is just like, God, what's hurting today? And like,
Yeah.
yeah, this
Oh,
used to be my opening height, and
right.
blah 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 blah.
It's an interesting culture for sure. That
But
whole
good, but
crowd.
good. I mean, we always just say, hey, we're not on the couch right now. Just being
Right.
out here is a victory.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter what you really jump. It's just being out here. That's the win.
absolutely. Again, thank you so much for your time. This has been a lot of fun for me, and thank you being so open about what happened, and talking about your dealing with it, how to deal with it, with your happy place being track and field and the high jump. It's obviously you wouldn't wish that on anybody, but the fact that you've been through it and were able to overcome it, and still keep moving along. That's just one of those things. It's, I often wonder about that. I'm like, why did I get through that, whatever trial that you go through, and everybody's got their trials. And I think it really literally is that God will put somebody else in your life that needs to have someone that doesn't just go, wow, that's terrible, but somebody that goes, yeah, unfortunately, I've been through the same and I know it's terrible and I know maybe I can help you.
Yeah,
You know?
no, not everybody can even hear these kind of things. They
Yeah.
just even just hearing it is,
Yeah,
nope,
for
can't.
sure. Yeah. Well, like you said, the first reaction, right, was like it didn't even happen. You're
Yeah,
just
no,
like,
my dad,
yeah,
Marine, climbed, did mountain climbing.
yeah,
He was a professional bear hunting guide for God's sakes,
yeah,
and no, he was like, nope,
yeah.
can't.
Yeah. Well, hey, appreciate the time and definitely let me know. We'll keep this conversation going because we're right in the thick of the season now, right? We've got CIF
Yes, it's about to
is
get
coming
good.
up, Mount Sac, right after Mount Sac, all the crazy stuff starts to happen. So half your team disappears quickly because they're not talented enough, right? The ones that make it through league finals and go to CIF and all that stuff. So all of a sudden you get that more select group, right? And the
Yep.
more individual time. So that's always fun.
Yes, it is. It's
All
good.
right. Thanks. And we'll definitely I'm looking forward to further conversations and jumping.
Well,
And
thank you so
if
much for having me.
you are welcome. Send me videos. I'm serious. It doesn't
Will
take me too
do.
long. If you've got, I'll send you an example of the shot I like. I don't know if you're like me. When I like the front view, if you're coming whatever angle down the bar, I usually shoot not straight down the bar, maybe 5 degrees over. And
Yep,
then I
that's me
can
too.
see the
That's
knee
the spot.
angle. I can see if you're hitting vertical, all those good things. So,
Yep.
all right.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a great evening.
Bye.
Bye bye. All right. And that was track star Staci. I sometimes still to this day didn't get last names or anything. And then it's funny what people do on Instagram. They don't always, put down everything. If you want to find her, go to Instagram at Trackstar Staci, and then she's got a link tree on here, and something about the DJ stuff. Link tree Staci Nichols, and three more. So she's doing a lot of different things. And again, we talked on a very sensitive subject, something that had happened when she was a kid, only 6. So how she dealt with it, sound like it was basically shut off for a long time, and then it kind of came back on her all at once, and she's had to learn how to deal with it. But it's one of those things. It's being talked about more in our culture than it has been, in a long time. We've had, Simone Biles and some other athletes talk about their struggles with mental issues, whether it's just stress or, fear of failure, anxiety, right? So you could call it performance anxiety, you could call it, whatever you want to call it. But if you get to a place where it's incapacitates you from actually doing what you are trying to do, it can be problematic, obviously. So, fortunately, I think the conversation has finally gotten to a place where, instead of shutting down and hiding, which is, all too human, a reaction, right? You want to always put on a face. Everything's fine. I'm fine. Nothing's wrong, blah, blah, blah. And then, if you're waking up in the middle of the night and you're having nightmares and you're having headaches and stress and your heart rate's up all the time, and, whatever your symptoms are, and they become, detrimental to your life, then it's something's got to be done. So, those things didn't used to get talked about a whole lot. And maybe people knew what they were, but they didn't want to deal with it, so I think things are a little bit more open now. Everybody's realizing that, hey, we've all got stuff we got to learn how to deal with, and she has been very forthcoming, and I think that's commendable, and it's bound to help others, that are thinking, wow, she went through some pretty heavy duty stuff there, and she sounds like she's doing pretty well, so maybe that'll give somebody hope and give them someone to talk to, even, or whatever, the courage to find someone to talk to and get some help. So Again, thanks again to Staci Nichols, track star Staci, for sharing her life with us, coaching, competing, doing what she loves doing. And we had a lot of similar stories and ideas here about high jumping. So until next time, Troy Haynes from the Raise the Bar podcast signing off. You guys have a great evening. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you like listening to high jump nerds like me talk to anybody and everybody that has coached or jumped or trained or done something that is going to help us to raise the bar in our jumping. Then we do this all the time. So listen on in. Until next time, signing off. Have a good one.